my mom and my aunt and I took a girls' trip down to Galveston, the Gulf in Texas, which is a very common thing for Texans. You know, it's like if you want to go to the beach, there's really only Galveston, and it's not the nicest beach in the world, but there's the ocean. You know, it's like the ocean is the ocean, and you can't really complain. But we decided that it'd be a fun kind of weekend trip. It's about, you know, I don't know, a 6-hour drive from Dallas maybe. So you get in the car, you road trip, you go down for the weekend, you get some sun, you get some ocean. And when we were down there, my mom and I are very much like walking tour people. Anywhere we go, we want to like learn information. And one thing we had never really done in any trip to Galveston was a walking tour. It had always kind of been like beach centric. And my mom was like, I wonder if there's something, you know, kind of historic that we could do here. And Texas's history, of course I'm biased, but fascinating history for a state just because of its uniqueness and, you know, the Mexican-American War and the Alamo and the fact that Texas is the only state that could still secede from the Union and be its own country, and all of these really vastly odd things about Texas. And there was a Galveston ghost walking tour. And growing up, I've always been a scaredy cat. The dark is something that like I've always had nightlights. I still have nightlights in my apartment. I don't like sleeping in the pitch black. I like being able to see things and have my bearings. And I do think a lot of this is, one, it's very common for kids with, not to be like, whatever, but kids with high intelligences and high amounts of creativity tend to have more nightmares and like childhood fear manifestations, which I think is interesting. But I was like, are we sure we want to do a ghost walking tour? Because that seems a little bit like playing with fire for me a little bit. But then I was like, you know, Reese, you're 20. Like, come on, we can do this. And it's really just a slant on a historic walking tour, right? It's a way for us to learn history through this like fun kind of lens. And yeah, my mom also, this is maybe kind of a tangent, but she has always had kind of paranormal experiences. And when she was a child, they deeply scared her. And she said that there was one time that a few spirits just always were with her. And one night she was just so scared. And she was maybe 7 or 8. And she just like remembers praying the entire night. God, please take this away from me. God, please take this away from me. God, please take this away from me. And she never saw it again until she had kids, which I think is really fascinating. But so this kind of thing is something my mom and I have always been fascinated with. Long tangent to get back to this story, but I'm sure there's coloring all the context, right?
Always important.
So we're doing this ghost walking tour, and Galveston has been the site of several battles, but also because it is a coastal town, there have been several floods that have like completely decimated Galveston, and lots of them have been quite deadly. So there is a lot of death in...
Yeah, the hurricanes too. They get hit, like the big old hurricanes that come through, wipe out the city. Yeah, sure. Exactly.
So it's like just the energy of destruction is very much there. It's a tempestuous kind of site. In its nature, because of nature. And we were going around to some different like old houses and learning a little bit more about different battles and important sites and what buildings are considered related to what kind of historic facts. And we're walking, and we walk up to this one house, and our tour guide is, you know, kind of wrapping up the last story from the last place as we were getting to this next site. And we walk up to this house, and just that feeling of like, you know, when your body goes hot, it's like the saying your blood runs cold, but it's like almost when you feel your face flush and it feels like you're on fire, but it felt like that over my whole body. And I felt like tingly, and like I could feel my heartbeat like everywhere. And then I started getting so nauseous, and I thought like, oh, I must have eaten something bad at dinner. Like, this was just bad, because this was a in the dark walking tour. It must have started at like 8 o'clock at night or something. So we had dinner before. I was like, I must have eaten something that just didn't sit right. I'm about to throw up. And so I went across the street away from the house, and my mom and aunt were still there. And my mom's like, do you want me to come with you? Are you okay? And I'm like, no, it's fine. I'm just going to, like, you'll still see me. I just don't want to throw up in front of everybody. Yeah. I'll also insert a trigger warning before we start talking about this in post so that people know that this is happening, just in case. Walk across the street, completely purge, just like my body just couldn't do it, couldn't handle it. And I was like, yep, something happened. I'm going to be over here. And so after the purge happened, my body started cooling down. I started feeling calm. And I was like, that was so weird. I've never felt that before. But, we've all experienced, anyone who's thrown up, I think, has experienced the immediate relief that comes afterwards. That's like that. I just needed to get it over with. And now it's like, woo, we're good. I start tuning back in to what the guide is saying, walk a little bit closer, but I stayed kind of far away because it was like I didn't want to, I don't know. You don't necessarily want to have just thrown up and then go stand right next to people in a crowd, right?
Exactly.
And so I was kind of keeping my distance a little bit, but tuning back in, and the guide starts telling the story of this house and how this is the most haunted site in Galveston, according to like ghost experts, right? And that in this house, the story is that there was a family and there was a father, mother, older daughter, and a younger son. And for some reason, the father started going insane, kind of the Shining situation where it's like you don't really know why or what's happening, but he starts losing his mental capabilities. And I never want to, in this kind of narrative, I think oftentimes mental health gets demonized, and so it's important to be mindful of that. But he starts drinking heavily, turns to alcoholism, is really going off the deep end, and starts like saying really scary things, and eventually starts abusing the family in this house. The eldest daughter is the only one who would fight back, apparently, in the mythology of this story. And the worst of it, one night, and the father was physically abusive and sexually abusive. The worst of it, it's a second story house, and they're up, and in the top of this house, there's like a window in the middle of it. The dad is like backing all of them out towards this window, and the window's open. And of course, our guide is like painting this really spooky narrative of like the fear of this happening. And the mom jumps. She was like, I'm done. I'm out of it, and dies on impact, apparently. But I'm like, also second story. It's a ghost tour. Who knows fully what happens? The dad grabs the son and ends up killing him in front of the daughter. And the daughter's like fighting back, and then eventually kills the daughter. And so the daughter is the last one alive. And the mother was not there to protect her children, and the daughter was the one who like felt like she needed to protect her brother and couldn't. And then after the dad ends up killing his family, he kills himself. And then the guide goes on to say, for this reason, most young women have a lot of trouble when they come around this site, and a lot of them will start to feel physically sick. And I was just like, what? Like, you can't make that up, right? And I was like, is that for real? Are you being serious? And the guide was like, yeah. And around back is, there's a lot of like spiritual communities in Galveston because it's kind of this spooky site. Around back is a site of the Satanic Temple that operates out of Galveston for gathering. And so there's a pentagram at the back of the house, and it's where they do ceremonies. And I also want to be clear that I think Satanism and the modern satanic temples that we see throughout America is a deeply nuanced and complex thing. And actually, they do a lot of good, especially when it comes to social justice and care. So that's a much deeper conversation. But it is a site of gathering for this kind of sects of people who like to worship the darker aspects of the human experience, and that young women really have a lot of trouble here. And the guide was like, okay, and so now we're going to go back behind the house so you can see kind of the pentagram that's been set up and the holy site. And I was like, I can't do it. Like, there is just something in me screaming at me, do not do it. Like, get away from this house. And I stayed across the street, and then we kept on walking. And as soon as we were like out of the vicinity of the house, I felt 100% fine. So that's
story.
my yeah. I don't know why it occurred to me, but actually, I totally do. But with you saying that, with your experience of sometimes these kind of spiritual or non-physical things inducing physical ailments, it's fascinating. And we know that like stress and exhaustion can make us physically sick, that if you're pushing your body past its point of what it can handle, it will force you to slow down. And I think this is maybe another dimension of that if the non-physical thing that is stress, that we know has these physical reactions in our body, can create these physical experiences, spirituality also causes these different areas of our brain to light up and different hormones to be released. And I think it's interesting to think about this, right? How it then becomes manifest through our physical reality in our bodies.
Yeah, and I think it's because I've had certain experiences myself, and I'll share my story that sort of I think sparked your story as well, since we're talking about it. But I guess I'm, how do you blend science and spirituality here? At what point is it just stories we're telling ourselves? And is that okay? Like does it really matter? And it's what I've been thinking about a lot myself personally is we use these frameworks, right, as ways of interpreting, as ways of making meaning, of extracting meaning from events, and at the same time, we somehow want our interpretation, I think, or we want validation that our interpretation is true in some ways, because I think our mind fights against that. So we seek out other, we've had this experience our minds can't quite explain. And we want that to be validated. And at the same time, our minds are going, well, was this real? Was it?
Right.
And sometimes I think we can go. I don't know. It's the map is not the territory. is what comes up for me in the sense of, like this experience happened. You had this experience, and what meaning did you? I mean, what meaning did you take from it though? So you took the meaning. Okay, well, I'm not going back there. But I mean, afterwards, like what was your like, what did you take away from all of this as it sounds like you were in your teens or like what was your takeaway?
Yeah, I think I really love the map is not the territory. I think that's a really beautiful phrase to use for this. In the moment, I think like my nervous system was just like, I was in fight or flight for sure. And it just was like kind of firing and unsettled. And, in the fight or flight, I'm very much a, because now we say fight, flight, freeze, fawn. I'm very much a freeze, which is not great in every situation, as I have come to learn. And, the more you know about this yourself, the more you can build in better, healthier reactions in different situations. So I think in the moment, it was just very much like freeze and flight, right? That was like, don't move, but if you're gonna move, go away. Do not go further in to like whatever this is. It just felt so wrong to my system. Like when you walk into a room and you just get a bad feeling, or also when you walk into a church and you feel this need to get quiet, right? It's like the energy that different places hold. And so I think after the fact, I wanted to just enjoy the tour. And so I kind of put it out of my mind. But of course, it was really hard to. And I was talking to my mom after, and I'm lucky to have a mom and an aunt and a family that we talk about these things very openly, and it's not weird, and we try and stay curious about it, right? And my mom was like, well, what did you have for dinner? You know, like, is there something we can draw this to? And I was like, you know, like I think we went to a Mexican food restaurant, probably knowing we were in Galveston, and my mom loves Mexican food. So it's like probably some Tex-Mex joint, very like likely that it could have upset my stomach. Like, who knows? And is it just a wild coincidence? And I think at the end of kind of talking about it there in the moment, it was like, I don't really believe in coincidence all that much. I think that, sure, certain things are just like, that's kind of odd, like, whatever, move on. But there are certain things that go past coincidence that it's like, how do you not make meaning of it? And it really just struck me like, it was very much a be careful with this stuff. And I think in my experience with any sort of spiritual work, whether it be stuff when I was still when I was younger and still considered myself a Christian, I still had experiences with stuff like that it's like I would be reading scripture or be praying, and, you know, you'd get a feeling that's like, yeah, don't go there, right? When I first was learning tarot, I had a really alarming, the very first tarot reading I ever did for myself was the Death card, the Devil card, and the Tower. And very much it was like such a warning, right? Like I continually have these experiences of like, I often thought that they were stop signs, but now the meaning that I choose to make of them is guidings, right? That it's like, this isn't saying don't go here, don't do this. It's saying it's powerful and so are you. And when two very powerful things come together, that shakes shit up. And you have to be careful. You have to be careful.